Howdy folks, I wanted to start this video off by giving a brief bit of context on how I got the opportunity to work with this piece of history and a little bit more about the goal of these fossil projects that I've been doing. A few years ago I met a wonderful human named John who over his years has acquired quite a collection of fossils and rarities. Now, we had a lot of discussions about how these kind of artifacts are usually displayed, and the mounts are typically very minimal or hidden so as to not distract from the piece itself. In our case, what we wanted to do was really celebrate the piece and maybe give it some context of its environment. Fast forward to our current challenge. An absolutely immaculate 90-ish pound male mammoth tusk that's probably 20,000+ years old. Who the heck gets an opportunity like this? Really? I'll be the first to admit I was nervous for a handful of reasons, like can I pull off what I'm seeing in my brain, and how do I not break or damage this extremely old and, let's be honest, very valuable and expensive piece of natural history. Well, after a couple of sketch rounds, I knew a couple of things. I wanted to create a landscape referencing an icy, marshy area of Mongolia, seen in this photo here. I wanted the tusk to be oriented upwards as it really shows off those amazing curves and colors. I didn't want to damage, do any drilling, or affix this to any type of hardware. And lastly, I needed to be able to take it apart and transport it 100% on my own because logistics are important. Now that you've got a bit of the backstory, I hope you enjoy the process as much as I did. The first thing I wanted to build for this piece was a slightly elevated steel base. This gives me a sense of scale and parameters to work within. I wanted the base to be wide enough and heavy enough to handle the weight of the tusk. Using some reclaimed cedar, I was able to build up the initial structure. After that, I could use a power carver to create some topography. With the basic forms established, I took a bit of a break from the wood dust. One of my favorite aspects of sculptural smithing has been the ability to create organic shapes from a rigid, man-made material. The aim was to create forms to reference the natural grasses and the reed-like plants that surround the tusk. Starting with a core of 1-inch pipe, I cut and forged out the initial blades of the grass. From there, I could forge out individual pieces and attach them to this core. This process consisted of a lot of repetition, a lot of tapers of varying lengths and sizes. The environment that I'm referencing also showed yellow goldish stalks within these plants, so I decided to forge out some silicone bronze that could be added to the center of each plant. The natural golden color will become more apparent during the finishing process. The reed plants allowed for a lot more variance in shape and size. In a similar fashion, I started with a cord and then forged and attached different tapers and rounded tops. Different bends and twists during the forging process gave each one its own unique character. Speaking of characters, look at this little guy. He was keeping warm near the forge during the cold desert night. Thanks for hanging out, you handsome devil. Since most of the forging was completed, it was time to get the mounting structures sorted out. I'm using pieces of plate steel that, once finished, will allow me to weld strong, durable mounts for the tusk. Using the paper and tape form you saw at the beginning of the video, I was able to plan the orientation and the position for all of my cuts. The next part of the fabrication had me the most nervous. I needed to suspend the position of the tusk and weld bracketry around it to ensure a tight fit. Each piece will have leather and foam inside to ensure the tusk isn't damaged. And since plastic wrap won't stop welding sparks, I covered the entire tusk in layers of wet paper towels to protect it from the heat. Nailed it. First try. Once I knew the 3 points of contact worked, I needed to remove the tusk to continue. Have I mentioned being nervous lifting this expensive piece of history? Wow. From here, I was able to work on each piece individually. I'm going to be creating covers for these brackets, but I wanted to create a movable jaw to make the installation easier. With all of the base pieces bolted down, I can seat the tusk on the left brackets and install the last bracket to lock things in. This is always the most exciting part of a large project, seeing all of the pieces come together. With the engineering aspects worked out, I could focus more on the cosmetic aspects. Purposely using low voltage with the welder, I was able to create a texture that will play off of this broken icy plate. I repeated the process for the reed plans as well. Since I'll be adding color to these pieces and I want to let the steel texture pop through, I clean the sharp edges and soften the welds with a coarse Scotch-Brite pad. If you've watched any of my past videos where I've used this technique, you all know how much I enjoy the texture of burnt cedar. The grain creates this type of topographic map texture that I really love. This final step was extremely cathartic. These Sculpt Nouveau stains work like watercolor, allowing for mixing of pigments and layering to create different tones and opacities. They also allow the texture of the steel to be seen. There's really nothing like quiet nights with a paintbrush in the workshop. After all pieces were clear coated, I put all of my parts together, including some small caps to hide the bullets. From there, I delivered and I unwrapped the tusk for the first time in months. I'm really proud about how this project turned out. I mean, what an opportunity to work with a piece of history that came from some tundra tens of thousands of years ago and somehow made its way to my tiny shop in the desert. I'm not really sure what's next on this piece's journey, but for now, if you or anyone you know might have interest in this piece, it is available for purchase. Feel free to message me for details or go ahead and check out the website for more work and information. Thanks as always for watching, you guys, and joining me on this weird journey I'm on. We'll see you next time.